following is a presentation of the High Spot Podcast. Making their way to the ring, talking about the world of professional wrestling, the team of Jeff Martin and the Trendsetter, Bryan Burga, the Jersey Wrecking Crew.
What is going on, guys? You're listening to the High Spot Podcast. I am Jeff Martin alongside the Trendsetter, my tag team partner, Bryan Burga. And you can listen to us on the Cheap Pops Podcast Network, as well as Shining Wizards and B+ Player Radio Networks. The Cheap Pops Podcast is on Spreaker. Trendsetter, what is going on? The High Spot Podcast is complete because you're here in the seat right next to me, Trendsetter. What is going on?
It's amazing, Jeff, if I can speak English.
It's imagine. You're making up your own languages.
Well, I always do, right, don't I? But especially first word out of the gate is not a good idea. But it's amazing what you miss when you don't have it. And, of course, I was out as you guys were getting ready for Final Battle and talking about it, which you did, Jeff. I have to give credit where credit's due. Did a very, very good job eloquently speaking, unlike me, of that pay-per-view, and looked forward to it. We saw it, we enjoyed it, and can I say I'm just glad to be back on the High Spot Podcast. Great to be talking about pro wrestling.
You sound like you're run down, you're beaten down, you're tired.
I always am. I'm always beaten down. I'm always run down, but I kick it up. I give the old college try when I'm here because you know what? I love talking about wrestling.
Well, we got a great show for you guys today. Brad Shepard is joining us. Of course, Brad Shepard from the Oh You Didn't Know wrestling show alongside John Fisher. And if you don't know Brad Shepard, this is the guy that through the whole year of 2018 has really come up as far as breaking wrestling news. And now you see him all over the place being credited by sites like WrestleZone.com, from Pro Wrestling Inc., to anywhere, Cage Side Seats. The guy is everywhere, and he will join us. Going to talk about 2018 and the year that was, and also a little bit of TLC and a preview of 2019, what he's looking forward to. So Brad Shepard will join us in just a few minutes, Trendsetter. And of course, follow our YouTube channel, High Spot Podcast, like and subscribe, and also to follow Adventures with the Trendsetter. Some great stuff there for you guys, for your visual pleasure, I might say there, Trendsetter, but also to
your visual and listening pleasure as well, Jeff.
Follow us on all our social media at High Spot Podcast, and of course, get our podcast wherever they're available, and also like and subscribe us on iTunes. Trendsetter.
I think they're going to say we're all good podcasts are sold, you know.
No. Well, I mean, hopefully one day we sell this mofo.
Yeah, hopefully one day. That's the idea, isn't it?
That's the idea. I think everyone wants to get paid for stuff. But Trendsetter, Final Battle TLC, we're kind of wrestled out, but Final Battle, man, I gotta say, did not disappoint. I made an emphasis on how historic it was going to be, and obviously it was, because that's the last time that we're going to see the Young Bucks, Adam, Hangman Page, and Cody in the Ring of Honor ring, because it seems like from all the reports, and you know, if you're watching Being the Elite and you're subscribing to that show, and you're following the twists and turns of what's going on with the Young Bucks and the Elite, obviously you can tell that they're going to start up their own promotion. It's not going to be exclusively, it's going to be exclusively, actually. They're not going to go back and forth to Ring of Honor or other promotion. It's going to be their baby. I'm sure the details will kind of like in the next few weeks open up and we'll see what's going on. But history making, man, because, we've been this past year spoiled going to the Ring of Honor shows and watching these guys perform. Yes, we will see them again in New York City, hopefully one day, but kind of the end of an era for the Bucks and the Elite in Ring of Honor.
A lot to decipher there, a lot to break down, but you're right, an historical factor, and we've been pretty fortunate, Jeff, where we have been a part of a lot of historical events. The Wrestling Rock and Rager, first ever event, All In. A lot of first and other promotions we've been very fortunate enough to be a part of and view ourselves as not only fans but also covering this as well. And this was part of it as well. And as sad as it was also kind of exciting too, because we had talked about I'm sure people are bored of listening to, but we are at the tail end of 2018. And the excitement now is what's to lead in the near future. We spoke a lot about how this is like an evolution of what professional wrestling can be and what's going to evolve to. And it looks like right now in 2019, that's going to be the case with the Elite in terms of Cody. Who knows? We don't know what's going on with Kenny Omega, but we do know Cody, the Young Bucks, Hangman Page, that the plans are set. The roads are leading towards something like that. That's most likely going to happen. And it's just kind of interesting to see that, that same momentum that's been here in 2018 carry over. I think it will. But again, it can't be the same thing. It's got to be significantly different, and I'll be interested to see what happens there. I'm also looking forward to Wrestle Kingdom. Is going to happen in early January, and see where the tail end happens during the IWGP Heavyweight title match. That's going to be a huge intrigue for me, looking forward to 2019. But you're right, man. Historical factor. Bittersweet, because we're a part of it. We saw it. And, we just hope it's not, well, it won't be the last time we'll see them again, most definitely. But, it held a special place in my heart, at least, to go to Ring of Honor and be excited to see, the Young Bucks, Cody, and then obviously the other great talent roster pool they have in Ring of Honor. But again, with everything that happens and a chapter closing for them, it opens a new door, a new chapter for Ring of Honor now to have stars that they've been trying to bring up from their dojo, or stars that maybe haven't been given the opportunity to now step up to the plate and say, listen, we want that opportunity. I think right now what I'm looking forward to the most is after the conclusion of Ring of Honor Final Battle is what's going on with Marty Scurll now and Jay Lethal for the Heavyweight Championship.
Yeah, they will have an encounter down the road, but news broke that it's going to be Dalton Castle who has the first opportunity.
Oh, my God, Dalton Castle, this guy again.
Yeah, he will have the first opportunity, the first dibs at their next pay-per-view.
Why? Where's the logic there, Jeff? He lost.
He never got his rematch.
Well, get in line, because look how long it took for Cody to get his one-on-one rematch. I'm sorry, Dalton, but you could take the little mustache or whatever you call it, the little makeup on your top of your lip and get to the back of the line, because you lost to Matt Taven, who right now is the uncrowned Ring of Honor champion as well.
Yeah, Ring of Honor, their next pay-per-view, it's going to be Honor Reign Supreme, I believe it is, and it's going to be Dalton and Jay Lethal. So there you go with that. But you know what? You're right, Trendsetter, though. Obviously, there's a lot of opportunity for new wrestlers. Of course, the likes of PCO has signed with Ring of Honor. Brody King has signed with Ring of Honor too. Bandito, who officially signed with Ring of Honor, he will start competing in January. So they're replenishing the roster. Obviously, Ring of Honor is maybe the promotion that kind of is taking the biggest hit right now. We'll see what exactly goes on with New Japan, whether they lose Kenny Omega or not full time to this new wrestling promotion that's being started by the Bucks and Cody, All Elite Wrestling. So again, so much stuff to look forward to. We're a couple of weeks from 2019, but still, man, we had a great time at Final Battle. Thanks to Joe Koff, thanks to Mark Krustal from their promotions. Their PR is top notch. Wish other promotions had that kind of PR department that really gets the job done. And again, can't say enough. We will always be Ring of Honor through and through. But just amazing time. The Hammerstein Ballroom is a venue like no other. And from Cody to Jay Lethal to then seeing Hangman Page and Jeff Cobb, which match to you stuck out the most, Trendsetter?
To me, it has to be the Hangman Page Jeff Cobb match. I think when we looked at it, it had the potential of being a show stealer. I think you might have mentioned another match. I really didn't give a show stealer one, but that was something that was in the back of my mind in terms of a match I wanted to see, because I felt it was overdue for Hangman to get a title. And and here's the interesting thing, Jeff. When it comes to Adam Hangman Page, when it comes to guys like Cody, the Young Bucks, it's amazing. Even Marty, although he has been the IWGP Junior Heavyweight Champion, these guys, they don't need championships, I feel. As much as I would love to see Hangman have an individual title, be a U.S. champion, be a world champion in the near future, they don't need it to showcase their legitimacy. They are top-notch athletes, and they deserve to be in the ring and deserve that top spot. So when I look at Paige, I mean, it's amazing when you're there, and this was early on in the show, Jeff, people chanting Hangman and the crowd on the top of their feet. That just shows you the level of respect and the level of legitimacy that a guy like Adam Hangman Page has. And it's amazing where I originally saw this guy, didn't know much about him, and thinking, all right, what is he, like a bar fighter? Wears jeans, cowboy boots, so he's like a John Bradshaw Layfield. And oh my goodness, was I really was I put in my place? Was I humbled? Definitely by the amount of the great work that he does in the ring. And I'll never forget the day, too, during the cruise where I'm working at the gym, folks, and Adam Hangman Page asked me, hey, you mind if I use the cable because he's trying to do tricep pull-downs? And I go to him, Adam, you don't need to do it. And he's like, oh, you're too nice. I mean, it's true. This guy doesn't need anything. This guy has that it factor that Jeff and I talk so much about.
This guy, Adam Hangman Page, to me, as I, posted on our Instagram, this guy will be the John Cena of a promotion one day, most likely a EW, All Elite Wrestling. And if he chooses to down the road and he wants to go, to the WWE, nothing can stop him except, of course, WWE Creative. We'll get into that in a little bit too. But this guy can be the John Cena of any promotion. This guy is going to be very sought after. There's so much talent, Trendsetter, still left in Ring of Honor. Flip Gordon, who came off a victory over Bully Ray, too. He, again, is somebody that you can look to build around in 2019. Matt Taven, who had a sensational matchup with Dalton Castle, took so many risks, man. The guy, like you said, has that it word. A lot of guys still in Ring of Honor that are getting ready to carry that torch that the Elite passed on to them at Final Battle. But, bittersweet. We love Ring of Honor. Looking forward to 2019 for them and what's on the road. But again, guys, don't miss out because we are a few weeks away from our free agency special, Pro Wrestling Free Agency here on the High Spot Podcast. We will keep you up to date on all the latest signings by all these pro wrestlers. And, of course, it's not if, but when Cody and the Young Bucks and Hangman make it official, whether they do sign with AEW, which is more than likely, and, we will have a show for you there. So you don't want to miss on the High Spot Podcast. Hey, if the NBA can do it, if NHL can do free agency frenzy, so can the High Spot Podcast on pro wrestling. The most important day for pro wrestling in a long time here, depending on where these guys will sign to. So it could have an impact in the very beginning of the new year, Trendsetter.
Definitely. I mean, that's the exciting thing about it right now when you're looking at from the standpoint, and social media being such a powerful tool it is, Jeff, we have more insight in terms of what's going on. Granted, we see being the Elite videos on YouTube, but a lot of people are more vocal about the inner workings of the business on social media and public platforms like that we, as fans, become a little bit more self-aware that, okay, somebody's contract is coming up. They're not re-signing. What does that mean? And usually most times the case is people do re-sign, but usually it's just leverage, and it goes to what I've been kind of discussing from the very mid-portion of 2018, and I've discussed it with every single person we've had on this show. I've discussed it with you. It really feels right now, Jeff, at this time, that the talent has so much more power and leverage than they've had ever before that I could ever really remember. And to me, it's such a great thing in terms of now they decide. It's not promoters dictating what the talent does or where they go or where they stand or where they can, where their glass ceiling is. It's talent themselves breaking through that glass ceiling, grabbing the ring for themselves, not the fake supposed ring that Vince McMahon talks about, and really making the business work for them rather than the other way around.
And, of course, Trendsetter, that was not the only wrestling event that happened over the weekend. WWE TLC.
Was for me.
Well, for other people, there was WWE TLC on Sunday.
Come on, not for you too, Jeff.
Well, I mean,
after watching Ring of Honor Final Battle, and I don't want to be one of those negative people that say, oh, WWE is just so bad. But after seeing something like that in the performance, and I said this to Jeff, and I'll share it with you guys, it rejuvenized my love and my passion. Rejuvenated. Again, another word I just made up.
That's all right, Trendsetter.
But you guys get it. You understand the emotion behind it. It really revitalized, is the word I guess I was looking for, my passion for wrestling. But then you go to see TLC, and then you see all the things in terms of what you don't look forward to when it comes to quote-unquote sports entertainment.
Yeah, but we were able to talk to Brad Shepard, of course, the host of the Oh You Didn't Know Wrestling Show. You can follow him on Twitter.
Say it the right way, Jeff.
Oh You Didn't Know Wrestling Show. You can follow him on Twitter at the Brad Shepard, alongside John Fisher. Do a great job, of course, and you can also listen to them on Wednesday. They'll have this little special eulogy to the man. But listen, we talked to Brad Shepard about TLC and also the return of Vinnie Mac. That's right, Vince McMahon returned this past Monday to Raw to shake things up again. So we get his reaction to that, as well as a look ahead at 2019. So without further ado, here is Mr. Brad Shepard on the High Spot Podcast. All right, Trendsetter, good to have you back for this interview, buddy, man. Really sorely been missed the last few weeks, Trendsetter, on these episodes.
I wish I could say the same.
Okay. All right, we're going to have here Brad Shepard, of course. We've had him on before, and he joined us now. You can follow him on Twitter at @TheBradShepard. He's the host of the Oh You Didn't Know wrestling show with John Fisher, and he joins us right now. Brad, what's going on? How you doing?
I'm doing good. How about you guys?
Very good, man. So we're on the verge of 2019. We're close. We're going to turn the page on 2018. What sticks out in your mind the most as we're looking now to turn the page on 2018?
Really, a couple things stand out. I guess first is Roman Reigns, who is just such a centerpiece to the WWE, and with his cancer diagnosis, that forced them to quickly adjust to what they were doing, what their plans were. It just changed everything greatly. So that's one of the things that definitely stands out to me. The other thing would be the creative direction. I mean, I think when you look at this year, it's arguably, from a creative standpoint, probably the worst ever in their history of putting on TV shows. It's really bad overall. So those are a couple of things that stand out to me.
TLC was this past week, and of course, everything promotion too, as well as the return of Vince McMahon to shake things up again. Although I would argue that really it was kind of the same diatribe by the McMahon family. Although now, though, Brad, I feel like I've become I'm part of the authority now. You're part of the authority. The Trendsetter's part of the authority. John Fisher's part of the authority. Just your thoughts on Vince McMahon returning and whether we can believe that things are going to change with Raw and SmackDown and just WWE in general.
Well, yeah. Now when the shows suck, I can blame you guys and everybody else because
it's my fault.
We all booked it.
Exactly.
I guess that's the joke.
So now who booked this shit? It's us.
Yeah, to me, it's never about change. I mean, I was talking to a source in the company this week in WWE, and it's like they said, Vince knows how to work the fans, and that's exactly what happened. I mean, Vince comes out onto Raw and SmackDown, and you got the fans chanting his music. They're giving him a huge pop. Meanwhile, this is the guy who's signing off on the worst creative, arguably, in the history of their TV show, right? And so it's just all kind of ironic to me. And, he cuts an in-character promo talking about change, but in reality, when you look at the format of the shows, everything is still the same, right? I mean, there's literally no change. So, that's something I would have to see to believe. And I don't think when we talk about change that the answer is bringing up, 6 people from NXT. I don't think it's doing a superstar shakeup. I think it comes from a much different creative perspective that has nothing to do with the wrestlers.
Now, your buddy Dave Meltzer pointed out that Vince didn't want to come back. Actually, this was a kind of desperation move. Any word on whether it was, or was it something that Vince McMahon really was looking forward to actually going back on TV?
Yeah, Dave's actually right here. I mean, Vince doesn't want to be on TV at this point in his career. He really doesn't. It was a necessity based on the feedback from the fans and the ratings. But outside of that, no, he didn't want to be there, but he knew it was necessary because there's always a Vince ratings boost. It's short term, but historically, when you look at the lulls they've had in the product, usually around this time of the year, Vince will do a return and there'll be a short-term ratings boost. And that's exactly what happens.
And not to kind of go off in a different direction here, but I know a lot of the rumors initially that Jeff and I were joking about, and somebody would ask me, what do you think this whole Vince McMahon returning thing is going to be? And I kind of went to the same conclusion. It's going to be a ratings booster. It's going to be another superstar shakeup to change things around, I guess, to change the covers over it, but still the same product and the same presentation. But also, it came to the point that maybe, who knows, maybe Vince might be moving alongside because the XFL is going to be developing up in 2020, and who knows, maybe he starts giving more power over to Stephanie and Triple H. Was that something in terms that you were thinking as well, or is it more of just a ratings booster?
Well, that's another point that makes 2019, I think, so interesting when you look at Vince McMahon's ventures outside of WWE. Of course, he has the XFL. There's a lot of pressure there. There's a lot of groundwork to do to try to make it successful now. He does have Oliver Luck as a CEO. He's running it. He has the experience, but Vince is a very hands-on guy. He's a micromanager, so I can't just imagine him being totally hands-off on this. So, I think that's going to be the challenge of 2019 for Vince. It's juggling WWE responsibilities versus XFL responsibilities.
When they announced the 8 teams for the XFL, Were you hearing these were the teams, or were there any other outside cities that had an opportunity to vie for a XFL franchise?
Well, I knew they were considering a lot of options, and I did break the news on Seattle being a city. But, to me, the most interesting thing when the teams were verified by the XFL themselves was, the markets that they went into. Seattle, Houston, Dallas. I mean, they went into NFL territory. And it's an aggressive strategy, and it's a strategy that tells me they're going to try and take the NFL fan base during the spring off season. And I thought that was very interesting, especially the arena size. You look at MetLife, and 6 out of the 8 stadiums had 30K plus seating, and so you're going to get an XFL game on TV, and depending on where they're at, you're talking possibly tens of thousands of empty seats on TV. That's going to look really bad. So I think that's going to be a big challenge for them, and I think they went way too aggressive on that.
I mean, only time will tell on that one, Brad, to see what happens. But you definitely can sense it's going to be aggressive. It's not something that they're going to be tippy-toeing around. But in this case, they've had more time now than originally when they first set up the XFL, where it was kind of done makeshift and kind of everything done last minute and figure things out as they go along. So we'll see what happens there. Going back though to Jeff was talking about how we're wrapping up 2018 and getting ready for the new year. To me, what I've come to myself personally, and I want to know what your take is on this, though. When I look at other products, and what's great about it right now, especially if you're a fan or you're covering professional wrestling, especially if you're a talent too, there's so many viable more options out there to promote your brand, to promote yourself as an independent contractor, like a professional wrestler. I see products like New Japan and Ring of Honor that just had Final Battle. Great show to end the year for them, for Ring of Honor. Do you see any change in the foreseeable future in terms of what the rumors are going about now with the whole New Year starts and what's going to happen with the Young Bucks, what's going to happen with Kenny Omega, Cody Rhodes, Hangman Page with the Elite? Any rumors in terms of them possibly opening up a promotion of their own and working alongside promotions like Ring of Honor and New Japan Pro Wrestling?
Well, certainly I think the All Elite Wrestling is a serious possibility. Obviously, we've heard a lot of reports about that. And, I think it goes back to if WWE wasn't doing well from a business standpoint, forget the product, on TV that we see, which is pretty bad. But just from a business standpoint, WWE doing well, everybody else does well because there's more of a piece of the pie for, the little guy. And so that's opened up some opportunities. And I think for the right person, they can be successful now. Are they going to compete with WWE? I say absolutely not. But, I think it's opened up some doors, and there are guys looking to do things outside of the WWE umbrella.
Is it complacency? Is it not knowing what to do with the talent on the roster? Is it, I guess, maybe just like not sticking to storylines and quickly quitting on them? What do you think has been the main cause of this whole fiasco of creative and the WWE fan being unhappy with storylines?
Well, I believe WWE made a business decision some time ago to never let a superstar be bigger than the brand. If they don't want to have another Hulk Hogan, they don't want to have another John Cena, they don't want to have another Austin, Rock, etc. They want guys to be successful, don't get me wrong. They want success because that gives them success, but they don't ever want them to be bigger than the brand to where it can hurt the company if they leave. And so that's a business strategy by Vince. And I think that has, of course, in a lot of ways hurt the product as well on TV because you see the things like the stop and start pushes, the 50-50 booking of winning and losing matches. And that is only going to let talent usually get over, but so far. And that's to WWE's benefit because then everybody on the roster becomes replaceable. When everybody's replaceable, they lose leverage. And then WWE has full control, and that's what they're looking for from a business standpoint.
But from that business standpoint, Brad, wouldn't you say that, they don't want another Hulk Hogan, they don't want another John Cena? But in the same way, if you're looking from the fans' perspective, that's what they were kind of doing with Roman Reigns until, of course, the back and forth with Roman. Do we turn him heel? Do we keep him a babyface? Do they stick with him? And now him being diagnosed with leukemia again and now having some time off and we don't know when he'll return. Weren't they still doing, even though you said they made that business decision for a while, doing the same thing with Roman Reigns, making him the face of the company and kind of trying to build him into another John Cena?
Well, they're certainly taking someone who they believe is going to be the face of the company, not necessarily who the fans want, but someone they believe can do the talk show interviews, who has the right look, who can wrestle good matches, et cetera, et cetera. They are taking him. But if you look at the booking of Roman Reigns, it was actually pretty terrible. From a character standpoint, he was not booked strongly. So you could look at a lot of the things he said in promos and a lot of his matches and say, he was not booked very strong as a character in a lot of ways. I think that's intentional because they don't want guys to go to that next level. They want them to be big. They want to make money off of them and use them, but they don't want them to be bigger than a company like the Hulk Hogan, who became bigger than the WWF. They don't want that because that's against their business interests.
So how does having Brock Lesnar as your Universal Champion not have him seem like he's bigger than WWE right now? Is it just because Vince is in a bind and he feels that's the only guy that can carry the
bring butts to the
championship or something? Like what? So what do you think is Vince's mentality on keeping the title on Brock? Who could be the guy that passes the torch, so to say? If it wasn't to Roman, then to who?
That's a great question. I mean, Brock is a unique entity in that you see, he did massive UFC pay-per-view buys during his prime. So the drawing power is certainly there with Brock. So Brock is going to do what he wants. He knows he has the star power because of what he did after crossing over to UFC. So Vince is looking to use that. But at the same time, he's not a full-time performer. So they're not necessarily building the company on a day-to-day basis around him per se. As far as who could take over from Brock, I think that's the million-dollar question. When I look at the roster, it's hard to see anybody at this point who could take over as a true, real top-level guy for what WWE wants.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's a gamble when you don't try to make someone bigger than they are. And me and Bryan talk to a lot of wrestlers, and we ask them what the differences are of going to other companies. And a lot of people feel they have creative freedom. I think that's one huge thing that WWE does not allow their wrestlers to do is when you're handed a script and you have to read stuff off. Cody said that he wouldn't go back to to read stuff off his script. He'd say no, and he's like, you're investing on the wrestler. What do you believe should be WWE's mentality?
Well, I certainly think they're playing the business strategy of playing it safe. They're on cruise control mode. Why? Because stock is great. Business is great. Whether the product on TV is good or not, the actual business of the business is great. And that's really what they care about the most. So they're looking to play things safe. They're not going to do an attitude era. They're not going to let guys cut promos where they may say something inappropriate and lose a sponsor, those type of things. So I understand that. But when you're talking about a compelling TV show and you compare WWE to, let's say, a primetime TV show on network TV, there's no comparison. They have the compelling storylines and characters. They're allowed to talk like actual humans where you can connect emotionally with them and invest in that. You don't see that a lot on WWE. And they kind of play it safe. It's kind of like a PG product that is very safe in a lot of ways, but also it creates a lot of boring and predictable formulaic TV.
Something you brought up, Brad, in terms of when we were talking about it, and Jeff had mentioned too, this whole, bringing Vince McMahon back and this whole superstar shakeup. And you said it to yourself, I don't think the answer is bringing up superstars from NXT. In terms of the packaging is still the same. The format is still the same of what they're presenting. You're just bringing in new individuals. And it got me thinking and wondering, I've mentioned this to Jeff several times as we've talked. When you look at NXT, for example, and now the idea of what Triple H wants to do in terms of globalizing the Performance Center, not just having the location. The main location is in Orlando, Florida, but moving into other parts of the world and, maybe Japan, maybe some places in Europe and Mexico, all over the globe, right? And I'm thinking, when I really look at the NXT roster and the people who have been called up, now granted, I'm not talking about this certain class that's getting called up, but you could look at the likes of EC3. You look at the likes of Austin Aries, who was here before, Finn Balor, who's now with the company, Kevin Owens is hopefully coming back, Sami Zayn. I mean, these guys weren't guys that were developed into the Performance Center. These were guys that were fully well-rounded on the indie scene and in other promotions and become names for themselves. Do you see anybody right now, besides, only from the top of my head, I could think maybe the Velveteen Dream, but again, he was part of the whole Tough Enough series, so we kind of know his backstory. Of these athletes they bring from all over the world, kind of like, has anyone jumped off the top of your head like, oh, this is the next guy to watch, basically?
Well, I tell you, and this is going to be puzzling for a lot of people, but I really like Baron Corbin. and I think he has been a product of the Performance Center. But from a bigger, and I'm not saying he's the answer, by the way. I'm just saying he's one of the people I think who's come out of the Performance Center that we see continue to prove week in and week out. But I think largely when you look at the Performance Center, you have to talk about it being a failure. When you look at the homegrown talent that they've developed that doesn't come from the independent wrestling world, et cetera, it's a failure, right? I mean, it just, from an objective standpoint, you can't say that it's been a big success. And you look at the talent that gets called up and what happens with them. And, you know, the 6 talents that are being called up now, we get a promo. It's essentially 30-second back-to-back promos of these people with no real identity saying they're coming to the roster soon on an already crowded roster. So, you know, I don't see the formula for success there at all. I think NXT and the main roster have to do a lot more communication and a lot more collaboration from a creative standpoint. Otherwise, it's going to continue to be a failure.
There's so much in that whole statement because when you take a look at the way they choose who gets called up, I mean, Heavy Machinery hasn't really done anything in NXT, and they get called up, which I think they're like, oh, okay, they're big dudes, and those are kind of Vince's guys, you know. And then, of course, Vince's love for Lars Sullivan that we keep hearing about, maybe he's the only one that could succeed. EC3, I mean, didn't really, besides that matchup at NXT in New Orleans, other than that, really was struggling in NXT. It's very hard to try to figure out the mentality of who gets called up or not, right?
Yeah, definitely. Now, don't get me wrong. I do think there are certain characters that do well or are better suited for the main roster. I think EC3 is one of those. Another recent character would be Elias. He was a flop in NXT, but he's big time on the main roster. So I truly do think, based on how the styles are different, that some are more suited for main roster. But yeah, I think there's been a big disconnect, and it's hard to understand the rhyme or reason. I mean, I don't think Heavy Machinery is going to pop a rating, right? So I don't get what goes behind the decision making on that for sure.
And also, too, like, you would think that the roster that they have right now, if they hadn't messed it up creative-wise, you've got like a Finn Balor there, who, I mean, that's a guy that, like, you get so excited about when he gets called up, you know, gets hurt through no fault of his own, and then Vince loses confidence in him. And a guy that I'm starting to look at, that the guy to me looked like a sure thing, and a guy that me and Bryan were talking about who could be the face of a WWE is Drew McIntyre, and he's been in a losing streak the last few weeks on Raw. I don't get that. Do you understand anything what they're doing with Drew McIntyre?
You know, it makes no sense. So you're trying to understand the illogical now. You look at Drew, he had the momentum. It seemed like he was in line for a big push, and then they just start, you know, having him lose matches. Now, there has been a tendency at some points in WWE for Vince to push guys, have them lose, and then push them again after they pass his little test. So this could be the big test for Drew McIntyre before the big push, or it could just be another case of stop and start pushing, and he's going nowhere. Only time will tell on that. But either way, I think that's a bad idea, right? I mean, if you're going to push a guy, if you're going to invest in him, you want him to be a winner. Look, whether you like it or not, whether it's fake or real, people want to cheer for winners. And the more you lose, the less likely people are going to be to pull for you. So, you know, I think it does Drew no favors to continue to lose matches to people like, you know, Dolph Ziggler, who has been a character they really haven't invested much in a long time.
You know, it's funny how you say that, right? Perception's reality, and, you know, wins and losses, people joke around, don't really count in professional wrestling, but the manner in which you lose, it changes the perspective of how you view somebody in terms of, are they the next star? Are they pushing them in the right direction? You know, I just shake my head sometimes when I think about it, and I revert back to watching other promotions and other products. And granted, like, there's no question, and I'm not here bashing in terms of, oh, WWE, you know, they are the number one. They're going to be number one for a while. Nobody's even close to competing with them for decades to come, basically. But my idea is this, that from Jeff and I going to other promotions and speaking to talent there, it really seems, although their dream as a kid growing up was to work for WWE, because they remember the greats like Hogan, like, you know, Macho Man Randy Savage, the list goes on, Shawn Michaels, Bret Hart. it doesn't really seem like the desire sometimes is to go there now, because like Jeff mentioned before, speaking to some talent, they're like, well, I like the ability where I have my own scheduling now, and I have my own ability now to kind of book myself or make not even more of 8 figures than I would make in WWE, for example. Do you see that trend continuing even more now as we approach 2019, where it really feels, at least from my perspective, I want to get your take on it, that really, unless you're working for WWE and that's the main goal I guess everybody wants to go to, it really seems like the control is really in the wrestlers' hands now, and the talent, in terms of they can now pick and choose where they want to go and build themselves up using social media as their own brand.
Yeah, that's a great thing for the business, I think. Absolutely. They've got those options now, and that's good, because WWE and that path is not meant for everybody, and that's certainly okay. Look, when you're talking about WWE, it's an enormous operation to be a wrestling company, so you come into the company and you're a small fish in a big pond. So your odds of making it are just so small now. I mean, look how many guys in NXT they have signed, over 100. They'll never see the light of day, most of them. So whether you're talking about a crowded main roster or a crowded NXT roster, you're just such a small fish going into WWE. You're going to have such a small chance of success. So you have a decision to make. It's about money, sure. It's about schedule and a lot of those type of things, and it's about control of your character from a creative standpoint. So I totally understand not going the WWE path. It's not going to be for everybody, and that's okay.
Well, one, I guess, direction that WWE is going to is really heavily pushing the women's division. This year 2018 has not only been historic as far as like independent companies, coming to the forefront, the G1 Supercard coming to selling out Madison Square Garden. Regardless if you want to say it has to do with WrestleMania weekend, that's fine. They did sell it out. But, of course, the women's revolution, everything. I saw a tweet that you wrote that you said, R.I.P. the man, 2018 to 2018. Did you think that wasn't the right thing to do to Becky, have her lose the title at TLC?
I'm going to do a cheap plug here. So I'm recording the week's episode of the Oh You Didn't Know Wrestling Show tonight with John Fisher, and I'm doing a eulogy for the man. So make sure to check that out. iTunes, SoundCloud, Google Play, wherever you find podcasts. I think you'll enjoy that, or you'll get really pissed off, one of the two. So yeah, I think, they made the wrong decision with Becky Lynch. They sure did. They kind of plugged Asuka into the situation, and they had her win the title and took away the momentum from Becky Lynch. Again, Becky Lynch was starting to build real momentum, and what do? They cut their legs out from under her. And I just don't understand that unless it's intentional. There's no logic behind it.
You think the logic of the illogical that we're trying to explain here might be the fact of what you just mentioned before, that Becky was becoming too popular, that she was getting chants, on Raw when Ronda Rousey was trying to make comments and they'd be chanting Becky, 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 and they're thinking, all right, this is getting too much now, so we need to cut it off as soon as possible.
Yeah, that's absolutely what I'm referring to. I mean, I can't think of another reason why it would make sense.
It just.
And with that being said, with cutting off that momentum, and everybody been talking about and speculating the fact that there could possibly be a main event women's match for WrestleMania 35. I know they don't do numbers now. I'll still count it as a number at MetLife Stadium. Can you see there being a triple threat match between Ronda Rousey, Charlotte, and Becky, still building off the momentum, considering what happened at TLC?
I can, yeah. I can definitely see a main event match. They have discussed a singles and a triple threat match for WrestleMania involving them. So I could definitely see it, and it's something that could definitely main event. Now, creatively, how you get there is something you have to figure out. But I think there are 100 different ways they could have done that without Asuka.
Well, let me ask you this. Since you're the authority, Brad, right? So now the show's in your hands and it's in all our hands. How would you set it up? Would you want to be a singles match between Charlotte and Ronda Rousey, or to have that unfinished business or business never got started between Becky and Ronda? Or would it be a triple threat match?
Well, I think I like the idea of building toward a women's triple threat at WrestleMania. But, I didn't understand plugging Asuka in there. I'm not a big Asuka fan as it is, but I didn't see. I thought it would have been better off to give someone else on the SmackDown roster who needed it the rub from a character standpoint. So if you're going to strip Becky Lynch of the title because she can't compete or something to that effect, there are plenty of other women who need it that you could have plugged in there short term. Meanwhile, you continue to build the feud between Charlotte and Becky on SmackDown and occasionally plugging in Ronda as well then you really start to ramp that up at the Royal Rumble. But again, I just didn't understand the way they went about it, especially with Asuka. I don't know how that does, the SmackDown roster any favors. I mean, whose career are they improving by doing that?
Before I get to my question, I just got to say to you guys, how good is Charlotte? I mean, how good is her, like what she did to Ronda Rousey at Survivor Series? Then, this change, this kind of metamorphosis. She kind of hoaks up now, like in the middle of the ring. How good is Charlotte, Brad?
Yeah. She's a total natural. And it's odd because, of course, Charlotte, she never planned on being a wrestler. It's not like she was just some huge wrestling fan who always wanted to do this. She just has an athletic background. She's tall, and she came into this and was a total natural, and it's just amazing. And I think you look at Ronda Rousey. She was a UFC fighter as she came into this, and, hey, she's a complete natural. So I think they got really lucky. But I think that what you see in that with those two is these are two strong female athletes. They have a background in athletics and fighting, etc. And that's really something I think to be said when you're looking at someone who can come into the WWE and do well.
My question is, the Seth Rollins and Dean Ambrose match, really, to me, honestly, I would say TLC was so-so, and that's being nice. The Dean Ambrose Seth Rollins match was kind of a bore. Hearing that they weren't too happy backstage about the outcome of the match or how the fans were reacting. Did you see it too, that was kind of a boring matchup and there was just like no real heat with Ambrose or just no one really cheering for Seth?
Well, I think that attributes to the poor storytelling they did. I mean, they just totally, again, took the momentum out from under Dean Ambrose's feet as a heel. He was starting to develop heat. Fans got sensitive about the comments he was scripted to make about Roman Reigns, which was approved by Roman. They totally changed his character on a whim because of it and turned him, from this dastardly hated heel into a guy who doesn't like how people smell or doesn't like germs, or it was just like so corny and stupid. And it just totally killed the feud. And they began telling like a really weak story. I thought it was just not relatable. It was not aggressive. You're talking about two people who were in the Shield, who were brothers. This should have been a lot more relatable to that sort of a situation in real life. And I just thought it was really, really poorly told. And we saw that in the match. It was a total flop. I mean, that is the worst received match they've ever had. And they've had some really, really good matches together. But I think that reaction was very, very telling. And it was an indictment on the storytelling between the two of them.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I just kind of laughed a little bit when you mentioned how Dean Ambrose doesn't like people's smells. He's a germaphobe walking out in that mask. Remind me of Bane from The Dark Knight Rises. So really funny stuff in terms of that. But you're right, completely a storyline in which nobody becomes invested in whatsoever. But something that I'm invested in, looking forward to, is the mere fact that, Jeff and I have heard it from Chris Jericho talking about a big announcement for the Rock and Wrestling Rager, what could possibly happen next year. And then again, rumors going about, what's going to happen. Is there going to be an all-in 2? So I want to ask you, Brad, from what you've been hearing, would an all-in 2 gain the same type of momentum, counting the success of the original all-in and the Wrestling Rock and Rager from Chris Jericho?
I think it would have a reasonable amount of similar success. I really do, because it's the same fan base. And as long as they don't lose any momentum with that fan base, I can't see that support dwindling. So I would say, yeah, absolutely. They've, whatever you think about the situation, they've cornered a particular fan base, and that's very smart from a business standpoint. And they're getting their money's worth. So, yeah, I see them trying to keep that going for sure.
I think right now what's going to be interesting is as the older fan, the older WWE, WWF fan, starts maybe heading towards this fan of being independent wrestling and liking that wrestling that they knew, they're always going to have a fan base. And I think that, a promotion run by the Bucks and Cody, and whether it's the Jacksonville Jaguars owner's son, whether he's involved or whatever, I think that what we're going to come to see in 2019 is just a lot more options, and it's going to be a fun ride. But as you head into 2019, what do you see? What are you looking forward to the most heading into 2019?
Well, in 2019, I'm looking forward to seeing how Vince juggles his responsibilities between WWE and XFL and how that may impact the creative direction of WWE. Does Triple H take over day-to-day responsibilities? Does Vince try to juggle both? I think there's a lot in there to look at. So that's something I'm looking forward to. And I'm also looking forward to what they're going to do with the top guys in the company without a Roman Reigns. What direction are they going? Those are two fascinating areas for me that I'm really looking forward to.
Now, with closing off 2018, I have to ask you this, Brad. With everything that's occurred in 2018, a lot of ups and downs as every year is, and looking forward to the new year and what it brings, we just talked about, who would you say is the number one wrestler of 2018 who's had the biggest impact towards the tail end of this year?
Well, I think when you look at, there's a couple of people you have to look at, right? Unobjectively, you have to look at a Roman Reigns, no matter how you feel about him, just based on how, he was presented in the company. Obviously, top guy. Obviously, he did go out in October, but through the first 10-plus months of the year, he was a heavily featured character on WWE TV and events. So you have to say he has an enormous impact in the biggest wrestling company or sports entertainment company in the world. So you have to look at Roman Reigns. Also, you have to look, I believe, at Ronda Rousey. Ronda Rousey coming in from the UFC with that mainstream attention, and she has been a total natural. So she's someone I think to watch for as well. Those are the two that really come to mind as far as, the wrestlers of the year having the most impact. Now, personally, would Roman Reigns be my favorite choice for wrestler of the year? No, he wouldn't be. He wouldn't be in my top 5. But I understand, from an unbiased standpoint, the direction of the company, how he's featured, that when you talk about the biggest company in the industry in the world and how he's featured, it really does have to be him.
And, of course, Brad Shepard, of course, you follow him on Twitter at the Brad Shepard. Of course, he is host alongside John Fisher, the Oh You Didn't Know Wrestling Show. And, again, listen to his eulogy on Becky Lynch this Friday, right, Brad?
It's coming out. It'll actually be out on Wednesday.
Okay.
Wednesday, December 19th, but you can listen to it anytime through any place you listen to podcasts. I think you're going to enjoy it again, or you may hate it. But either way, follow me on Twitter and tell me what you think.
And Brad is actually going to give us his wrestler of the year, who he thinks is going to be for our end of the year show next week. So definitely want to listen to that. He's going to contribute his male wrestler of the year for us here on the High Spot Podcast. So Brad, again, thank you so much, man. Have a good Christmas and a new year to you, and definitely keep in touch, man. A successful 2018, man, because you killed it. Because from where we first started talking to seeing you credited on WrestleZone and all these other wrestling websites, it's really been great to see, man. You really deserve all the acknowledgement that you're getting.
I really appreciate that. I think you guys are great, obviously. So happy holidays, Merry Christmas to you guys, and look forward to being in touch.
All right, that is Brad Shepard. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Trendsetter. That was the Collar and Elbow interview of the week. Collar and Elbow is a apparel brand founded by Al Snow, mixing wrestling passion with street fashion. Check out their entire winter fashion line, including brand new long sleeve shirts and hoodies. You got to go to collarxelbowbrand.com. Save 10% on your entire online purchase just by entering promo code HighSpotPodcast. Trendsetter, there's only a few more shopping days, so get your shopping done. I don't think you'll be able to get it, by Christmas now if you order online, but still, if you forget a certain family member, go to collarxelbowbrand.com and better late than never, right?
Better late than never. Yeah, you took the words right out of my mouth there.
So Brad Shepard, we want to thank him again, and I can't wait to listen to the man eulogy coming up here on his show on the Oh You Didn't Know Wrestling Show.
I think I say, so your ass better follow him on Twitter.
There you go. Your ass better follow him on Twitter at the Brad Shepard. All right, Trendsetter. So we got his thoughts on TLC. We kind of shared our thoughts on it, on Dean Ambrose and Seth Rollins, on of course, the man, Becky Lynch, and Charlotte and Asuka. But I want to say one thing, though. Sure. One thing that I think that WWE is getting right, and that is this whole women's revolution, this whole women's division. And that match, to me, has just showed you exactly that 2018 is ending on a great note for the women's division in WWE.
Yeah, that is definitely fair to say, Jeff, and you're right in terms of where they're positioning the women. That they were the main event of the of TLC. They've been the main event for several pay-per-view shows. Before that would be, it would not be believable that would ever happen if we talked about this 5 years down the road. But it's true now. It's a reality that the women are just as equally as viable as the men in terms of they can sell tickets. They can attract an audience to be invested into the storyline. And I say that very carefully, because when you really looked at the product and what WWE's presenting to us as a fan base, the storyline, the involvement of the audience being invested hasn't really been there, but it has been there for the women's division. Now, there are certain concerns of mine, but if we're going to talk about just purely the pay-per-view and what's its success, the main event, I think it was a success. I think it threw a huge curveball, and we talk about events like this, Jeff, where it becomes pretty predictable, and something that I'm sure a lot of people didn't expect, but it's shocking for me to say that, because when you really thought about when Asuka came from NXT to the main roster, nobody had more momentum than she did. Nobody thought that she could ever be defeated, let alone that she would eventually become SmackDown Women's Champion. Now she has, it's kind of been more of an upset, which I find kind of hilarious. The fact that, granted, if you're a fan of hers or not, but in terms of her legitimacy as a champion and how she can carry and be a badass, that people saw that as a shock because of the momentum of Becky Lynch and where Charlotte Flair has been right now. But great main event. It definitely told the tale of combining all these storylines together of Becky, of Ronda, of Charlotte. But now, my question to you is, Jeff, after the events of TLC, and we're strictly sticking to the women's division here too, has it built any more excitement, any more anticipation for, we're getting into WrestleMania season now in the Royal Rumble? Has it built the excitement that we normally felt not too long ago, about a year ago from this date, the excitement of WrestleMania approaching? Do you feel that, or is it still not there?
I heard you the first time, Trendsetter. I'm just kidding, Trendsetter. I just really
your voice got really high.
I just
there.
really want to answer the question. No. Yeah. I will say this.
Maybe wear looser pants.
I will say this, Trendsetter. They did throw a curveball at TLC with Asuka winning the SmackDown Live Women's Championship.
Well, I just said that. They threw a curveball. Are you going to repeat everything I say now?
Because I'm trying to get something for audiograms, man. I'm trying to do a little speech here, but you keep interrupting. Anyways, the SmackDown.
Now you know how it feels.
The SmackDown Live Women's Champion now is Asuka. So yes, there was a curveball thrown, and I think that Asuka should have gotten this a long time ago. It shows you exactly who got affected the most by Ronda Rousey coming to WWE, and it's kind of Asuka, because Asuka was a kind of legit badass, but now with Ronda Rousey coming in, she's got that background of UFC. Kind of took a little bit of the thunder from Asuka, where everyone was thinking, okay, we would love to see Charlotte versus a Ronda Rousey, and maybe a Becky Lynch and Ronda Rousey, where Asuka took a back burner. But now adding Asuka into the mix is kind of a little bit like maybe it's a little too late, but you want to see where it goes. To me, I believe, and as happy as I am for Asuka, she's just a transitional champion, or maybe they have somewhere down the road where they see her defending that championship, at WrestleMania against maybe a Naomi or somebody. But to me, it's clearly going down the road of a Becky Lynch, Charlotte, and Ronda Rousey triple threat match at WrestleMania. And am I excited? Yes, I am.
Well, I can clearly tell you are, Jeff. And we're approaching WrestleMania season here. So for me, I don't know. I can't agree with you in terms of the excitement. Do I see it going that way? They're going to set up a triple threat match, and that will be our main event. Yes, I think it's inevitable. They're so set that that's what they want to happen. It's going to happen because, in my opinion, they've invested so much in this storyline more than any other storyline on the main roster, whether you're talking about Raw or SmackDown Live. So, but the excitement isn't there for me right now, and I will need to wait to see what's going on. And it's a shame that approaching the Royal Rumble, usually it's exciting time to say, who's coming up, what's going to happen. On the past Monday Night Raw, we hear the superstar shakeup happening again, and to me, it's just like, I'm sorry, it's lost its luster. To me, I don't get an excitement off the superstar shakeup, and in my opinion, Jeff, I'm like, who are you trying to kid here? Like, bringing up stars from NXT is going to be your shakeup. Usually it was signing stars on the independent scene that weren't there before.
They can't get the main guys. Obviously, they tried.
What main guys are you talking about? Are you alluding to, Jeff? Are you talking about the Young Bucks? Are you talking about Kenny Omega, a Cody Rhodes, or a Cody in this case, a Hangman Page? Of course not, because those guys refuse to sign with them.
Yeah, and I think they understand that the reason is because they're not going to have that creative freedom to to do what they want, and WWE is going to have it their way or no other way. And Brad made some great points about WWE not wanting to have a Stone Cold or The Rock on their hands. They want to be able to control that person. They want them to be successful, but not too successful. So I think it's never ever going to happen where a wrestler can grab those imaginary brass rings ever, because Vince McMahon and the higher ups will never let that happen. And a lot of great points by Brad. So Yeah, you know what? This is usually the time where we talk about WrestleMania, though. January, once the Royal Rumble, maybe a week before it, when we start feeling that buzz for WrestleMania, especially since it's our backyard here in New York City this time, and we don't have to travel. Maybe we'll start feeling that for WrestleMania. But right now, there's still so much to do, man. We still got the free agency, Pro Wrestling free agency special coming up on January the 1st. We've also got Wrestle Kingdom to get excited about. So, enjoy the holidays. It's a nice little break for the next few days of what's going to happen. Of course, the Trendsetter is going to be celebrating a birthday as well, too. So,
let's not talk about how old I am, Jeff. Seriously.
So that's too. And any chance I got to jab you, Trendsetter, especially with your age, I always have to do. So again, there's
I'm just happy you remembered my birthday, because at your age right now, you're forgetting a lot of things.
Well, there's a little, except my blue chew. I always got to make sure I use my blue chew, especially at my age. But Trendsetter, the excitement I think will happen as we head like a week before the Royal Rumble. So we'll see what happens. But again, though, this is the little break that we get now. The Elite's done with all their commitments. Everything's going to be full force for next year, 2019. Whether they do start up all of wrestling, which we believe will happen, and of course, Wrestle Kingdom. New Japan presents their WrestleMania, as you're going to get Kenny Omega versus Tanahashi for the IWGP Heavyweight Championship. I would not be surprised if Tanahashi walks away the new champion. But again, we'll have our predictions in a few weeks. But guys, don't miss out on our end of the year in review award show for the High Spot Podcast. 2018 will be in the books next week, and we will give you our awards on stuff like Male Wrestler of the Year, Female Wrestler of the Year, Event of the Year, and also independent promotion here in Jersey that did a great job. We'll give them a little award, too, of the best event of the year here in New Jersey that we witnessed here on the High Spot Podcast, too. So lots to do, Trendsetter. TLC, before we wrap it up here on the High Spot Podcast, anything that stuck out to you besides? We talked about Dean Ambrose and Seth Rollins. We talked about the triple threat match for the SmackDown Women's Championship, the ladder match, tables, ladders, and chairs. I guess the only other match is Daniel Bryan and AJ Styles here. And you got a wrestling match, but I think what we do is we think of AJ versus Daniel Bryan in Ring of Honor. We thought of AJ Styles versus Shinsuke Nakamura at Wrestle Kingdom. So when we get these matches, we kind of get let down. Take nothing away from the match. It was a really good match. But again, to me, it always falls short because I've already seen them at their best, and that was when they were in Ring of Honor or when the other independent promotions.
I started debating this in my own head, Jeff, of why it's fallen short for us. And I think that the expectations are way too high, that nobody can live up to those expectations that we saw Shinsuke and AJ at Wrestle Kingdom. We've seen AJ Styles and Daniel Bryan at Ring of Honor. We've seen AJ Styles and Samoa Joe and so much that they've done in TNA before it was renamed Impact. So I think to expect that would be unfair because obviously they're a lot older than they were before when we saw them then. And it's just a different time or that type of style doesn't work. You're right. It was a great match. To me, what kind of I wasn't let down in terms of I have more trying to figure out now. And I think the theme here, I think that'll be on a shirt eventually for you and I, trying to make logic of the illogical in terms of what to be trying to do here. It makes you kind of wonder what direction they're going. Well, it's clear to see what direction they're going with Daniel Bryan, but kind of see what direction they're going to go with AJ Styles here because he's been a great champion. And when you've been a champion for that long, for him not to retain the title, to regain the title, I wasn't surprised. But now it's, all right, what's the next thing for AJ Styles here? There was the rumors of a contract dispute here. Does he want to wrestle any longer? I mean, he's at the other side of 40 right now. How much more does he have left in the tank? We hope a lot more, but now it makes you wonder what direction they want to go here because you don't make a move what they did with Daniel Bryan and then take the title right off him.
Yeah, it's always tough after a long title run because you're like, what's next? Do you think anything else is like maybe kind of a demotion or you wonder if he after that, long run that he had, if they can match that same thing that he had while he was a champion. So it's going to be tough. But, I like the Daniel Bryan character where it's headed. It took a few weeks to finally see where they were going with it, and I get it now, and it's really good, and I look forward to more Daniel Bryan. But, the AJ Styles thing, we'll see what happens with him. And then, of course, Ronda Rousey and Nia Jax. Listen, I don't think Ronda Rousey was going to lose this. She gets kind of... sends a message to the man, to Becky and Charlotte, that she is a champion not to be messed with. And, of course, she, cost Becky Lynch and Charlotte the match for the triple threat match, TLC match. So a lot here to digest here, but I think as far as the women go, the direction they're going to. You know what they're trying to do. As far as for the male side, the guys got to step it up here. We talked about Seth and Dean, and it was kind of lackluster. Rey Mysterio and Randy was kind of, again, lackluster too. So the guys got to step it up here. The women are on pace here. We're heading into what looks like a triple threat match at Mania here, and the females are going to main event. So that is crazy, man. What a year it's been. And Trendsetter, I want to wish you a happy birthday here. The birthday boy. I want to give you a little clap there, Trendsetter. Not going to say the age, but again, I want to wish you a happy birthday. Enjoy it, man. And thank you for all that you do here on the show.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, you're listening to the High Spot Podcast. Again, we're on the Cheap Pops Podcast Network. Brian Fritz's baby. You can listen to Between the Ropes every Wednesday. And again, we're on Shining Wizards and B Plus Player Radio. A little announcement, too. We are going to be on iHeartRadio in the next coming days. So you can find the High Spot Podcast there as well. And, of course, the Cheap Pops Podcast Network alongside, on Spreaker. And, of course, follow us on YouTube and all our social media at High Spot Podcast. Next week, end of the year show, awards 2018, High Spot Podcast, the only way they can do it.
Yeah, the only way we can do it. And you guys have been listening to the High Spot Podcast. Thank you so much for listening to the show. We will catch you again next week. Enjoy the holiday season. Be safe. Be happy. Because, again, we do this for one reason and one reason only. We do this for you, the crew.
Happy birthday, Trendsetter.